Hello, Professor. How are you?
Great, Wayne. What the fuck is up?
I was confused with some of the material in the books that you suggested we read for our quarterly self-assessment. For example, in The Great Faults of Humanity, the author wrote of how in the 20th and 21st centuries, schooling and education was based on a grading system, which was based on information and knowledge chosen by the professor, and did not take into account individual intelligence and strengths. Creativity was frowned upon in this left-brained system. I don't understand why humans would do this.
Dwayne, in order to prevent future mistakes, history must be understood. About 1,000 years ago, nearly every entity was manipulated to be made into a business. Things that we now understand to be free, such as learning, education, travel, shelter, and food, were placed in a system of hierarchy. In other words, the healthiest food, most helpful learning tools, most sought-after education, highest quality vehicles, and the most beautiful homes were available only to those who could afford them, and at the time, the currency was based on a banking system that enabled those in power to print out any amount of money they wished, and more conveniently, or more carelessly, create funds out of thin air with the push of a button. The system made everybody think that they were in debt, even though only about 1% of the nation's money was in circulation. In other words, most of it wasn't even real. It was a figment of everyone's imagination. Thus, theoretically, if everyone in the nation paid their debts back, there wouldn't be any actual money left. Eventually, society was just like, fuck this, and formed into what we now are today.
And that's exactly what I don't understand. If 20th and 21st century humans wanted to improve society, wouldn't they base currency off of something of value, rather than pieces of paper and cyberspace? How could such a system ever accommodate everybody if it was based on a generalization paradigm? In other words, since there are so many different kinds of people in the world, varying with different religions, beliefs, motives, values, traits, strengths, weaknesses, deficits, etc., how could everybody abide by the same laws and be judged under the same rule in the courts, as well as the educational system? How could innovations be accomplished and humanity be improved if something as basic as individualism was not respected and expressed freely in society?
Well, let me tell you something. Humanity, as a whole, did not want society to be this way, even though it appeared so. Many great individuals helped to change the system into something humane, and succeeded eventually, but it took hundreds of years. Mohandas Gandhi, Gautama Buddha, Martin Luther King, Wayne Dyer, and many more, are all noted in history for being visionaries and seeing the world as it should have been. Most of humanity was deluded, with multiple venues, mainly by the media, into thinking that they needed to be a part of the insane system that they were in. They sacrificed their precious family time and their well-being for minuscule man-made inanimate objects that television programs and magazines told them would make their lives better. As a result, people would work day in and day out, striving to own the next best toy or entity that would further place them on a higher pedestal, so to speak, in the system of hierarchy. Furthermore, these man-made products that people practically worshipped were predetermined by manufacturers to have a set date of obsolescence. In other words, the products were designed to fail, even though countless people came up with practical ways to keep products running hundreds, even thousands of times longer than the manufacturers did. This was a little scheme invented by manufacturers to keep people customers, and keep people buying. Individuals who came up with ways to make products more superior to those on the market were coerced or paid off to keep their mouths shut, so new innovations couldn't be made. The system was suppressing human ingenuity at every level. To add to that, products that were designed to fail were piling up in junkyards all over the world. Precious minerals, such as copper, gold, and platinum, that were used to make cars, airplanes, watches, furniture, and other goods were wasted every day in junkyards because conservation and economics weren't considered important enough. New cancer treatments were invented, only to be turned down by pharmaceutical companies because they were too effective and not profitable enough. Commonly, people were creating cars that ran on water while the industry kept producing gas-powered cars and wouldn't abandon carbon fuel because it wasn't economical at the time. People were fooled into thinking that the perfect spouse was somebody of material substance and financial success, educational stature, or somebody who was attractive according to the culture at the time. Personality and character strengths were only taken into account after these preliminary judgments were made. If one was not attractive enough, rich enough, or in certain social groups or classes, they weren't considered a potential mate. As a result, countless marriages failed, and the divorce rates skyrocketed because people married individuals with all the money, power, and looks in the world, but without any honor, integrity, or character. And on top of that, many of these people were just downright fucking boring. They valued shiny objects and fancy cars more than relationship improvement and the beautiful personalities and worthwhile individuals.
So let me get this straight. Citizens were all grouped into the same paradigm, had to all follow the same laws, were directly and indirectly coerced into keeping their mouths shut and their minds closed, and were denied effective cancer and other therapies because the profit margin wasn't high enough for pharmaceutical companies. Individuals would marry people they didn't even love for money or fame. And in the midst of all this insanity, society was creating murderers, rapists, and thieves because parents were fooled into thinking that greed, big houses, and shiny objects were of more value and importance than family time and raising children, so they neglected their children in the years that mattered the most.
Now you're getting it, Dwayne. It was a society just waiting to fail. When the disparity between the haves and have-nots became so great that human life and integrity was at stake, the people stood up and tore down the system, only to build a new system, from the ground up, which respected every human, and didn't delude people into thinking that there were actually groups of undesirables or unworthy people. Everybody is special, and everybody deserves to be wealthy in every aspect of their lives. Systems of hierarchy can be good in certain instances, like sports or other games. The opponent with more advantages is likely to win the game, but both opponents respect one another and keep playing the game. The rules are set, and that's the way it is. Life, however, is not a game, and doesn't function on rules, other than the laws of the universe and nature. In every game, there are winners, and there are losers, and when there are losers, everybody loses. But when society doesn't treat itself like a game, and realizes that everybody is unique and has their own sets of skills and attributes, nobody can ever lose. Trying to make two different humans follow the same paradigm is like trying to grow an orange on an apple tree. It just doesn't work, and sooner or later, the apples and oranges fall far from the tree. This saying used to be viewed in a negative context, but now it is viewed positively.
They thought that was a negative phrase. How could they be so fucking backwards?
The figurative saying that the apple falls far from the tree was just yet another phrase used to make people think that they all had to conform, which is complete and utter bullshit.
Thank you for all your time, Professor. I truly learned a lot about our origins. I've now learned that there will always be problems in a society where individuals placed at the top of the pyramid make the decisions for the individuals at the bottom. It seems that sooner or later, the people at the bottom will inevitably wake up and realize that they are in an insane fucking system and that they have the power to make everything right in the world.